Um, Today's objectives are to discuss Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory, to list ways that hospitals have created momentum on the baby-friendly journey, to describe strategies that have worked for hospitals to engage staff, administration, the community, and others, and leave with ideas to bring back to your hospital and or your community. So really the question is, for today, how do we get things started? And we know that it might look different at each hospital. Depends on current culture, staff, different support. And because of that, that is why we have leaders from some Mississippi Chance hospitals telling us their stories. But I will say there are many pieces that we hear almost all hospitals saying, and one thing for certain is universal, and it's that it takes work. So it takes work because it's all about change, and we know that change is hard. So I just have a couple of quotes here from some of the hospitals that we're working with. It feels like we're moving as slow as molasses, and we're working so hard. We're working so hard to get everyone on board. I've even started sending all staff an email every single day. And really, it's true. It's a lot of work at the beginning. And I've included this image of Sisyphus here working to endlessly push this boulder up a hill, because I feel like it might feel like this often, that it's just upward movement, moving up this hill. And it's true, because this journey really means major practice changes for a lot of hospital staff. And we know change is hard. So when we start talking about how hard change is, what really comes to mind for me is this Rogers diffusion of innovation. So this is also called an adoption curve. It's a little bit easier to say. So this adoption curve is simply a way to describe how people adapt to a new idea. It's typically, basically just how a new idea spreads. And Rogers in the mid-1900s, 1950s, he came up with this theory on how change spreads. It's a typical bell curve, close to a typical bell curve, and it's grouped into 5 major areas, or 5 major groups of people. And this is used in healthcare, it's used in technology, it's used in many different fields, just to kind of understand how change occurs. So we'll get into just the different groups. The first group on the left-hand side there are called the innovators, and it's about 2.5% of your population or your staff. They are also known as enthusiasts. They're typically risk takers, and they understand and apply complex technical knowledge. They're leading the way. I think for a lot of hospitals, these people would be the task force leads, or people who are on this webinar, people who really understand the importance and are moving forward to get baby-friendly in their hospitals. Tactics usually aren't needed for this group because they're already on board. The second group, about 13 to 14% of people, are categorized by Rogers as early adopters, and these are also people who are known as visionaries. So typically, they're natural trend setters, role models, and they serve as general opinion leaders on the unit or in the population that you're looking at. So these people might be your task force leads and other supporters. And typically, methods to get these people on board include sharing information sheets or how-to manuals. Typically, that's enough to convince this group that the idea at hand is important, because they're also already aware of the importance of the change that's being presented, in our case, baby-friendly, and or specific practice changes. We can kind of look at this at an upper level of all of baby-friendly or specific practice changes. The third group is the early majority, and it's about 1/3 of the total group of people. They're also they're not typically opinion leaders, but they do engage quickly. So, and this is specifically successful if they see that respected colleagues are engaging as early adopters. And some strategies for this group include sharing success stories or showing evidence of the new policy or changes as being effective, and that can be helpful. The fourth group are the late majority here, and that's another third of the group or population. And they're typically, they typically adapt after the average person. They are skeptical and more cautious, and they do respond to peer pressure, and it can be peer pressure from the first group that we've already mentioned, or they can be influenced by the laggards, which is the last group I'll mention next. But strategies for this group that work include stories and information of other nurses and or hospitals that have successfully adopted the policy change, the whole program, Baby Friendly, for example. So just hearing success stories can also work for this fourth group. And then the last group are the laggards, and that's about 15% or 16% for Rogers, and they're also known as skeptics. They want to basically just maintain the status quo, and this group is hard to get on board. Strategies that can sometimes work for this group include peer pressure, statistics, just sharing statistics with this group, and lastly, basically just telling this group, this is what happens, this is what will happen if you don't partake in this change. Just kind of showing, not consequences, but yeah, I guess consequences. We'll call it consequences of not joining. So this is a great way just to look at change in general. But unlike the image that we had of Sisyphus on the first page, which is, we have a square here in our slide, but it should be an image of Sisyphus. This is not the same thing as Sisyphus. We are not pushing a boulder up a hill endlessly. This is, luckily, we're working in health promotion. So this is healthcare. We're going to use this, we're using the adoption curve. So you are going to hit a critical mass. And when you hit the critical mass, things start to lessen in how it's not as difficult because you've reached the critical mass. The intensity will ease because the number of people engaged have increased. The beautiful thing that I'm illustrating with this image is you won't be pushing against the current anymore, but the ball is going to go downhill, and it will be a lot easier once you get that critical mass. Another thing that Rogers points out about hitting the critical mass is that it confirms that the change will be self-sustaining, and that's what we're all working towards when everything becomes self-sustaining. Great. So we've talked about these changes on a population level or a group level. It's also important to look at the individual level. So each person that is a part of your team or a part of your staff is going to go through a change process. These 5 stages are also part of Rogers' theory, and basically these 5 stages dictate how fast an individual goes through that curve that we were just looking at. So the first few groups, like the innovators and the early adopters, they kind of zoom through these 5 stages and are on board. The last few groups, like the laggards and the late adopters, aren't as quick and may circle through the first couple of phases here that we're seeing. So the knowledge phase is when an individual is exposed to the idea but doesn't really have a lot of information about it. The second stage is the persuasion phase, and this is when the individual becomes more interested in an idea and seeks more information. So for a lot of us and for a lot of hospitals, this looks like a variety of things. People might be information seeking by looking things up online. They might Google what is baby friendly, or it may even look a little more negative, like what is this going to do for us? But any spectrum, anywhere on that spectrum of asking questions or information gathering is part of this persuasion phase. The third phase is decision, and this is when a person mentally applies the idea to what their present and anticipated situation will look like. So this is the nurse saying, all right, what is this going to look like in practice for me? And then he or she decides whether or not to really be on board. And if they do, they continue through the pathway or through these two stages. And if they don't, they kind of hang out in knowledge and persuasion. And that's where different tactics will work to get them through the 5 stages here. The implementation phase is where an individual says, all right, I'm in, I will try this. And the confirmation stage here is just when an individual says over and over, each time they do a bath in the room, each time they help a patient do skin to skin immediately, every time they make that decision, that is confirmation. So yeah, hopefully we move quickly through these stages, but it's not always like that, and it's okay. So that is 5 stages. And then lastly, I just have an image here. The best view comes after the hardest climb. And I put this here just as a reminder that the more work that needs to be done, the harder it will be, but the greater the benefit will be felt. And this is a picture that I took. This is the top of Mount St. Helens, and it's a particularly difficult hike because, as you probably know, about 40 years ago, the volcano erupted, and the whole top of the mountain doesn't have trails. So you kind of just have to go straight up, and it's pretty difficult. But once you get there, you can see mountains all around, and that is Mount Rainier that you're looking at on my screen, on our screen. But yeah, the view is beautiful. Hard work definitely does pay off, and our moms and babies deserve it. So to leave you with that, and our next presenter is Carmen Alexander from Merit Health Madison. So Carmen, you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Becky. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so Madison is a full-service 67-bed medical center. In our hospital, it consists of general med-surg, intensive care, surgical, and women's services. And we are a part of Community Health Systems, and our regional market consists of 6 hospitals, collectively known as Merit Health. Next slide. Merit Health Madison is located just off of I-55 in Canton, Mississippi, and the construction of our new hospital, it began in 2009. After much anticipation, the doors of our modern hospital opened in May of 2011. And again, our hospital is a full-service medical center dedicated to providing excellent care for our patients, as well as a safe environment for our employees. So shortly after settling into our new facility, we received notice that a new initiative was being rolled out. So we thought, no problem, it's probably just another policy change. But oh my, it was so much more than we imagined. It was a change in our culture. So what was our initial reaction? Slide, please. Next slide. So 3 phases later, we're on our way to becoming baby-friendly. Every amazing journey begins with a great team. Here are a few pictures of the awesome team members of Women's Services here at Merit Health Madison. Next slide. With each passing quarter, we were able to focus and learn from the past. Leveraging our strengths, we were able to focus on what was working well. Additionally, we made notation of what improvements and adjustments were needed. This was a team approach. No idea was too crazy, and no suggestion was turned away. So for the sake of time, I've just compiled our data for the quarters, all races combined. And as you can see in the third quarter, we did have a new physician to join our staff, and he greatly increased our volumes. And so we had to make adjustments not only in staffing, but also in time management and work processes as well. So as you can see, even with rooming in the third quarter, also with skin-to-skin after vaginal birth, those were two areas in the third quarter that we did fall down on. Again, like I said, we had a new physician to join our group, and he greatly increased our volume. So we have since regained our composure and have learned how to work around a few things, and we're on our way now to becoming baby-friendly. Next slide. So before baby-friendly, our education was pretty generalized. It was not very informative, and although it included the basic information about care, many of the topics covered were not evidence-based. Today, however, we have specific educational information that is supported by research. This includes things such as feeding on cue and also the benefits of breastfeeding. And these are the terms that are becoming more and more common with our patient population. Early interventions prior to baby-friendly were focused on the nursing staff, which is on the left, and everything we did was designed around performing all of our tasks in a designated time frame. And now we focus our attention, which is on the right, to our most important people, mothers and their babies. This is done by encouraging skin-to-skin and rooming in. Each concept is designed to promote bonding and feeding. And then the third step, in the past, our mothers usually would state their feeding preferences, and that was the end of the story. And now on the right, we are able to provide mothers with the necessary tools and resources to promote breastfeeding. Not only do we have the resources, but we're also able to show the mothers other benefits such as bonding, decreased risk of SIDS, and disease prevention and protection. And then lastly, we also learned that patient education is not just for the nursery or the labor and delivery nurses, but education, it had to be provided to all the staff members. Next slide. So what were some of the things that we did here at Merit Health Madison? Our starting strategy was one-on-one meetings. We needed to hear what everyone thought about this new initiative and how they wished to proceed. To promote growth, we decided to take one bite at a time. And after looking at the requirements, we knew we had to be very engaged, again, taking one step at a time. Executive and administrative support is a must. Engagement within the department isn't enough. Each department has a responsibility to ensure baby-friendly success and achievement. So we started departmental staff education, and now we include baby-friendly education as part of our general orientation. And just for fun, our staff is pretty competitive, so we decided to have a little competition. So what we do every month is we select a baby-friendly nurse of the month, and this individual is someone who has accomplished great strides in promoting baby-friendly. We recognize this individual by posting their picture and accomplishments for everyone to see. And then, let's not leave the patients in the dark. Early education is key. We provide handouts for all of our physicians' offices, and they in turn give these to the patients during their prenatal visits. This allows the patient to review the material and address any concerns prior to delivery. And our newest form of education is now in progress. We've actually uploaded the brief introductory videos from Co-Effective to laptops within the physician's offices, and this gives the patient a chance to watch the video and then ask questions prior to their delivery. And then lastly, news travels fast. It didn't take long before we started to get phone calls and patients began to request visits to our facility. They had been told by family members and friends about the new things we were doing at Merit Health Madison. And we felt that when patients were informed in a timely manner, they were better able to prepare and plan for their exciting time. Next slide. So in hindsight, what are some of the key points and takeaway lessons that we've learned so far. We just selected 2 of the things that we would have done differently. And so the first one would have been creating a larger task force, especially in the introductory phase. This is definitely a team approach, and committee participation we have seen often leads to increased engagement. And then lastly, the frequency of staff education. So many times we would provide information and then do follow-up, within a month, but we found that if we keep the information in their face, we found that repetition is what really drives the point home for all of our staff. Next slide. Are there any questions from anyone? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Carmen. Does anyone have questions for Carmen? Also, if you think of questions while anyone is speaking, there is, Moon pointed out, but I'll just remind you, there's a little box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. It's a chat box. And if you think of questions while we're moving through the presentation, definitely go ahead and write them there if you want to ask them at the end or ask them when the speaker is finished. So please take advantage of that. We will also have time at the end for questions. Great, and so next is Lisa Ackridge from Wayne General.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. My name is Lisa Ackridge. I'm the OB manager of Wayne General Hospital. If no one knows where that is, it's a very small hospital right on the Alabama-Mississippi state line. Wayne General, our mission is to provide quality health care that meets or exceeds the expectations of our customers. Our guiding principles, 3 of these guiding principles kind of plays along the same lines as the baby-friendly guidelines. I believe that the patient is our #1 customer, that our healthcare team is our most valuable resource, and that the importance of being professional and patient satisfaction should always be recognized. We are a 80-bed facility. Some of the services we offer are intensive care, swing bed, home health. We have a surgery department and emergency room services. Our obstetric services consist of 2 LDR rooms, 6 postpartum rooms, a nursery, and 1 operating suite. Our daily staffing would be 2 registered nurses, an LPN, and a nurse's assistant. We have a total of 18 part-time and full-time employees in our obstetric department. That can be a help and a hindrance in this process. I believe it's going to be a help because that's less people that we have to get on board, less people we have to train in the long run. So that's the positive side of having less staff. The hindrance is sometimes we wear multiple hats as these nurses and as these office managers, so we feel like we're pulled dozens of different directions. Before we started this baby-friendly process, right now we are still in discovery, but we are ready to go into the D1 any week now. But before we started this process, it was probably typically like most of your deliveries. Mama had baby within minutes of her birth. We let her see the baby for a few minutes. Baby was whisked away to the nursery, stayed in the nursery at least 4 hours before it got its bath. Took us to about 6 hours post-birth to get it back to its mother's room. At night, newborns were spending a lot of time in the nursery. The nurses would round all the babies up about bedtime, let the baby spend the night in the nursery, let mama rest. We had lots of mothers and families requesting their babies. There was times that their babies were denied to come into the room. Well, he hasn't had his bath yet, so we will get him to you when we can. Which in the end made for unhappy mothers and families. I mean, they wanted their children. So this is one of the reasons we have partaked in this journey. Our baby-friendly process here, you know, is still in discovery, so we're learning as we go, a few steps at a time. If you haven't started your journey yet, the most important thing is just choose a day and get started. There's no day like today. Just go ahead and get started in your process. When I first looked at the 10 steps, it looked massive. It's like, how are we going to be able to do this all by ourselves? So we decided that we were going to implement the process one step at a time. So we went ahead and chose one that we had already, you know, been tinkering with a little bit. So we decided we were going to put all of our efforts into doing skin to skin. We were going to do skin to skin, you know, the best we could, document it the best we could, and that's where we were going to start. So that's what we have started now. I think we're doing an excellent job with our skin to skin. We also decided as we implement the processes step by step that we were also going to implement our policy step by step. So we have formulated our skin to skin policy. As we add the other steps, we're going to implement them and kind of combine them at the end. When you're implementing your steps, use the PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. I had never really used that, and during our skin-to-skin process, we did use that a few times, and it works. To look at the process you're doing, to get feedback from nursing staff that, you know, this is what happens at this point in the process. What can we do to fix that? And it works to keep playing, just practicing it over and over and over. Another thing that'll help you with your process is when other facilities offer their assistance to you, take it. If they're offering you policy, if they're offering you ideas, if CHAMPS is offering you policy and ideas, take what they're offering. There's no need in starting fresh at the very beginning and doing it all on your own when you can just take what somebody else has already tried and implement in your facility and just go running with it. And the last thing is don't give up. Sometimes it can be, you know, so tiring, but you just have to keep trudging along. One of the biggest things we had issues with was employee buy-in. You have a lot of employees or a lot of staff who are really excited, and then you have some staff who are like, I'm just going to lay back and just see if they're going to do anything with this before I get too excited about it. So we had 2 or 3 staff members that, you know, kind of just stood on the sidelines and looked and watched. We had a good bit of employee excitement, though, so sometimes that excitement can be contagious, which it has been in this area. A lot of our employee outlook changed when they started their 15 hours of the breastfeeding education. And a good many during that process had their aha moment. When they did their 4 hours of hands-on training, I had 2 or 3 nurses come back and say, you know, that was such a help. I feel like I'm better able to do this process now. So in the end, I think that making your employees and your staff feel empowered in this situation is what's going to ultimately make it succeed. I give them the tools to provide the quality care, the nursing education, the 4 hours of hand-on training, knowing that they can always come to me with their ideas, and we'll do a PDCA and see if we can get the process where it's easier for them to do. Because if the process is easy, they're going to be more apt to do it. Nurses also like to know the rationale of why we're doing what we're doing. Too often they feel like, oh, there comes Lisa again, what are we going to change now? But if they see the rationale behind why we need to do what we're doing and the evidence base, so many more of them are like, yes, give me what you want me to do, and I'm going to take care of it for you. So I believe just empowering them and not always going to them with, here's something else for you to do. I think in the end, we need to celebrate the accomplishments we do. Make sure they realize you did an excellent job today. You're doing such a good job with this. I have told them numerous times about how much better they're doing with skin to skin and how much better they're documenting it, that, you know, how proud I am. I do have a wonderful accomplishment this week. We've been trying to implement skin to skin in the operating room. And, I mean, we would try 10 to 15 minutes would be the longest a mom would be able to tolerate it. And she would be like, I feel like I'm smothering, or my arms are so tired. And then we would, you know, play with it a little bit, and then we would get to 15 or 20 minutes. So Monday, we had a mother who was gung-ho, yes, I want to try. We actually tilted our table a little different way so Mom didn't feel like she was smothering so. And we went skin to skin the entire operation, skin to skin transfer into the bed, and skin to skin her entire recovery. So she had a 2-hour window of skin to skin. She was very happy this morning. I spoke to her before she left because her last baby had latching problems, and she said this time has been so much different, and her baby is breastfeeding well as of today. So always celebrate your accomplishments. Be proud of the steps you're doing and the steps you're doing well. Next step for Wayne General Hospital is we're fixing to start in the next week analyzing our rooming in process. We still have nurses or providers that bring the baby back to the nursery and let me do my exam. So we're going to start analyzing our process, see what we can do education-wise, see what we need to do documentation-wise so that we can capture the baby in and out of the room when it has to be out of the room. And we're going to continue our nursing education. I did give them a little break over Christmas, so I got them back gung-ho, finishing their 15 hours of nursing education. So that's our next steps. We're excited and have plenty of nurses that are excited. So I appreciate y'all letting me speak today. Today was the first day I've ever spoke like this, so I was really nervous. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay. Thank you so much, Kim. Lisa, that was fantastic. The story about the mom breastfeeding well after skin to skin with the cesarean is just fantastic. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions come up for Lisa as we're moving forward, you can just write them in the little chat box. And next up we have Kim Pace from Southwest Mississippi Regional Medical Center. Kim, let you take it away.
All right. Hi. Can everybody hear me okay? I don't have a lot of slides like these other ladies do, so y'all have to just bear with me and just listen to me talk, I suppose. But my name is Kim. I am the nurse manager here at Southwest Regional. I've been the nurse manager for 4.5 years now, but have worked here in labor and delivery and in the nursery area for almost 25 years now. So Southwest is all I know, and I haven't really worked a lot of other different places, but going to a lot of these different workshops, I've seen ways a lot of other people are handling things and going through their baby-friendly journey. So it's really helped me broaden my horizons a little bit. But let me tell you a little bit about our hospital. We are located in McComb, Mississippi, which is about 70 miles south of Jackson, our capital city, obviously in Mississippi. We are part of Southwest Health Systems, which includes our hospital, Southwest Mississippi Regional Medical Center, which is a 160-bed acute care hospital, which employs over 1,000 people, and we have over 100 physicians on staff here at Southwest. That includes the Mississippi Cancer Institute, the Cardiovascular Institute of Mississippi, many physician clinics, an ambulatory surgery center, and a Southwest outpatient rehab facility. Our unit specifically, we opened one of the first LDRP units in Mississippi, one of the first, not the first, but in 1993, when we have 9 LDRP suites. We have a nursery area, NICU area, level 2 NICU area, and 2 operating rooms and 3-bed triage, antepartum triage area. We usually have between 700 and 800 deliveries a year, and we have 4 obstetricians, no midwives, and just one OB clinic here in our area. Is this going to be the slide that's up here the whole time I'm talking? You don't have the other blank ones. I'm sorry, Becky.
No, this is totally fine. This is perfect.
Okay. All right. So let me just jump into our baby-friendly journey. Our baby-friendly journey started probably about a year and a half ago. Angela Parker, who is our wonderful lactation consultant, and I attended a workshop. And sort of when it was everybody was kind of jumping on the baby-friendly bandwagon back then, and thought this is the great thing. We really want to get our hospital on board with this. So our first thing we sort of did was to kind of look at our process and what we're doing, and start with looking at forming a task force and trying to figure out which one of our doctors, which one of our obstetricians, and which one of our pediatricians were probably the best for our task force. And so we got them on board and started talking to the quality director here at our hospital and kind of got her on board, and things just kind of took off from there. So that's sort of how we started, and then we met for a couple of times, and then we started talking about what our plans were going to be next. And during that process, we were trying to think about, of course, the nurse in me always wants to look ahead to think about, well, how are we going to chart all this and what are we going to do? So I was trying to think about all that early in the beginning, which I'm not sure that was the best choice, but trying to make our process go a little smoother once we got involved. We're currently beginning phase 3, and so we've moved pretty rapidly through our steps, which has gone well. The staff has been just like anybody else. Starting change is always a hard thing to do. We were just like the lady from Wayne County said, our babies were always whisked away from mom after delivery, spent 3 or 4 hours in the nursery, got a bath, went back to mom. At night, typically our babies all came back to the nursery like they have forever to be weighed and bathed, and moms usually kept the babies in the nursery all night. The pediatricians always required babies to come back to the nursery first thing every morning for rounds, and so we were just like your typical old school labor and delivery LDRP unit. So that is obviously total change from where we're moving into now. So I think that where we started, so that was what our baby-friendly process was like at our hospital before we started. What worked best, I think, for us was starting talking to the staff. I had several staff meetings before we jumped into it to kind of figure out where everybody's thoughts were, and Angela has been instrumental in bringing this baby-friendly process together for us because she's so passionate about breastfeeding. And so it's really contagious when you're around her because she's so enthusiastic and she's so good talking to the patients, and you can't help but want to, these moms can't help but want to breastfeed and do all they can for that when you're around her. So anyway, we started looking at our policies and trying to figure out our clinic with our OB clinic is not owned by our hospital. And so we really found that our major obstacle was trying to figure out how to get information to our prenatal, the moms in the prenatal clinic, so that when they showed up to our unit, hearing about baby-friendly and hearing about skin-to-skin and rooming in and breastfeeding, that this was not obviously the first time they had heard that, because in the beginning, when we wanted to start doing a few things, we had patients showing up and we'd try to start talking to them about skin-to-skin and all that, and they would be like, what's that? So we felt like there was a huge barrier going on there. So we spent many days trying to come up with multiple ideas for their clinic to try to help them get the education out. And that's something we're still struggling with. Even going into phase 3, we're still struggling with with communication in the clinic, getting the information to the patients. We've tried handouts, we've tried lots of other different kind of suggestions, but they tend to, and I think they want to help us as much as they can, but they're really busy too. So that's a really big obstacle we're trying to get over right now. But our staff, I think that the biggest thing that got my staff moving in the baby-friendly direction was when I decided to send a couple of staff members to some workshops, not just Angela and I attending every single CHAMPS workshop or baby-friendly or Blue Cross workshop or whatever. I started sending some other staff members, some leaders from our department who sort of were able to go to those meetings and get excited and bring that enthusiasm back to the unit. And it almost like it meant more coming from a peer than it did from me, their boss, even though I try to talk it up all the time. But it just really kind of came through from those girls that went to that training. And also when CHAMPS came and did our 4-hour hands-on training, I think we got a lot of enthusiasm came when we had that done as well. I think that looking back, maybe we've already completed, all of my staff has already completed their 15 hours of online training. And sometimes I think looking back, maybe we started that a little too soon. I don't know how everybody else plays that education into their practice, but I think that we started ours maybe a little bit too early in our process, because it was like so much information on them very early on, and they probably could have benefited more from that education, I think, now as we're putting things into process, and it would make more sense to them. So I think if I had to go back, I probably would have done that 15 hours of education maybe a little bit later in our process instead of so very early on. And we also have included baby-friendly training in our general orientation as well. I know that was mentioned in one of the other ladies' talks, but we've included that into our hospital general orientation so that everybody in the hospital sort of is on board and know what we're doing, trying to do here in the hospital. Let's see. So right now, what we're doing right now, we have pretty much implemented skin-to-skin on all the deliveries. That's pretty much a routine, and that's sort of much where we started from the very beginning. Was we baby stepping into it, we thought, well, that's the one thing we can do that I think we can get consistent with, because I was kind of confused early on. I was thinking, do I need to have all these policies in place before we start practicing all this stuff? So I was like, well, let's just baby step into this and see how it goes. So skin-to-skin was where we started. And I think that that has really gone well, and I think that's a good start for people who are looking for something to start, baby step, just one thing to start doing consistently, and that was it. And that actually worked really, really well. And so after we did that, now we've started to try to some pediatricians rounding in the rooms. Where we've had an obstacle there is the things that the physicians need a chart on, all the computers, we needed to get their program that they chart on in the rooms with the moms, because we have computers in all the LDRP rooms. So getting that computer system put on those computers, which made it easy for the pediatricians to be able to do what they needed to do in the room as they're seeing the baby, that worked out really well. So we're starting to do that now. We're gradually moving in to doing the rooming in. Like I said, that comes with just a lot of education and getting things in order. One other quick thing I want to mention is before you really start this process of the baby-friendly, you need to look at your electronic medical record, whatever EMR you have. I know a lot of people have Epic. We actually have Paragon here at our hospital, and we needed to think about how we were going to chart all these new changes with baby-friendly and how the nurses were going to chart it to make sure that we had all bases covered with the charting. So Angela and I kind of sat down, and she brought in her breastfeeding part, and I was trying to think on my nursing side and tried to figure out ways that we could get the charting system to work for us so that the nurses weren't clicking from here to here to here to here to there, trying to figure out where to put all this baby-friendly stuff, because we knew we were going to have to pull this data out at some point for reports and things. So we tried to, before we ever started a lot of the processes, is to get that charting mechanism in place so that when we started implementing the process, the charting stuff would be there for us, and we would have to go back and do that later. So I think that was one thing that we did very early on that I felt like was a really big help to us. Now, the goal, like I said, for us right now is just moving more seriously into the rooming in. I think that the peds rounding in the room is going to be more, but making sure that your staff deserves praise. I think that staff get so bogged down sometimes, and we don't always give them the encouragement they need, but change is hard. I know we talked about that a lot today. Change is hard for a lot of us who have just been used to doing a way forever, and we just need to learn that change doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes these nurses have to be coaxed, and they need to be praised when they're doing well. And also just consistency is when we start a process, not letting things back up or change when census is high and things are busy. Once you start a phase and start a process, you need to try to make sure that it's carried through and consistent. I think that's it.
Great, thank you so much. Does anyone have questions specifically for Kim? All right. So now we really just have.
I have a question for Kim.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay.
You said that you now have education in your general orientation. Could you tell me what that education looks like?
We used a company called LER for our online education, and they have I think of like a 2 or 3 minute video that's like a synopsis of Baby Friendly that we were able to use, and we have a system called HealthStream at our hospital. Provides education. They can click on and log in, and they can videos or go through education stuff. So we were able to put that video on HealthStream for every new employee to review as part of their annual orientation, as well as new employee orientation. So they look at it when they're newly hired, and they go through a PowerPoint of the benefits of breastfeeding and the 10 steps, and it's introduced to all the staff when they're a new employee, and it's also going over annually as well, just to kind of keep everybody fresh to what Baby Friendly is about.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Awesome. Great question.
I have a comment. This is Anne. Hi. First, I just really want to thank the presenters. I think that was a really excellent webinar, and I do want to encourage others of you who are on the webinars to offer to contribute to our webinars, to bring in these perspectives. From my perspective, I think when we have actually the hospitals speaking themselves, that is a lot more helpful than simply us or someone else telling people what to do, because you really get to share the experiences, and you get to share different experiences, and we hear different ideas and different perspectives from different places. So I just want to really thank you all. And I have to say, Wayne Hospital, I mean, you guys are way ahead of the Discovery Zone, so get yourselves into the next one quick. You know, nothing like today, as you said. So I think you should definitely move fast, because you're doing a lot of work and you're ahead of what phase you're in. And sometimes hospitals actually, you know, many of you kind of get out of sync. Sometimes you get too ahead, sometimes you get too far behind. But that was just overall, it was just an excellent presentation, and I just want to thank everybody that took part and hope that it will inspire others of you to speak up on future webinars, because it's nice to have a range of voices and not always have the same presenters every time. So I just want to make that point and thank everybody.
Great, thanks, Anne. Does anyone have any other questions for any of the presenters?
I have a question. My name is Sandra. I'm from Hancock Medical in Bay St. Louis. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the Cofective videos that are used in the prenatal areas, maybe in the doctor's offices.
Yes, ma'am, Sandra. This is Carmen from Merit Health Madison. We were actually given that information by our CHAMPS representative, and like I said, we just provided the physicians' offices with a laptop, and we didn't designate at what month or what visit they had to watch the videos, but we did ask by the end of their transition period if all the videos could be watched. One of our challenges is how do we know that it's being done? And so what we actually do is just kind of drop by the physician's offices, just checking in with the office manager as well as the nurses on staff, just to make sure, if they have any questions or anything for us.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kim. I just want to have another suggestion that we thought, we haven't implemented it yet, but we are in the process of implementing, is if your hospital has a website, which most hospitals do, is creating a link on your hospital's website, maybe to your women's center or labor and delivery unit, and within that link have breastfeeding videos or videos about baby-friendly, about the benefits of breastfeeding or rooming in or whatever you're doing, and have those as links that even if sometimes the OB office may be too busy to be able to carry on a lengthy conversation of teaching with a patient, that they can even just refer them to your hospital's website to go through a quick PowerPoint or watch a quick 2-minute video, just as an encouragement or just some sort of introduction to what you're going to be doing at the hospital, so that when they come to the hospital, it's the very first time they've heard anything about Baby Friendly.
Yeah, what a great idea. Do any of the hospitals on the call today, does anyone do that? Is there anyone that can speak to how that's worked for them? All right, well, when you've tried that, you'll have to let us know how it goes, because that sounds like it would be really helpful for patients.
We've really just been trying to think outside the box, just things that are easy. Used to years ago, people would learn all about that stuff in childbirth class, and it's so hard having childbirth classes now. They're just like they used to be when you would come once a month for a sit-down childbirth class at night, and you brought your partner, and now things are so, everybody wants it quick, and so we've started doing one-on-ones, and that really has helped a lot. And Angela's also doing some breastfeeding classes as well, so it's coming along.
That's great. So I have a question for the hospitals that are presenting. What is, a few of you mentioned some of the first times you did education with your staff, and I'm just wondering what you started with. Like, what were some of the first topics that you reviewed with your staff at, the first couple of staff meetings you had about Baby Friendly, or if you had one-on-one sessions with staff, what were some of the things you felt were really important to cover first?
Becky, this is Carmen. You can go ahead, Cam.
Let's see, Carmen, did you have
oh, yes, ma'am.
an idea?
I was just going to say, initially we did like group staff meetings, and as we were having the meeting, people were, just kind of looking like, I'm not really sure about this. So that's when we started the individual staff meetings. Sometimes people are a little bit afraid to speak up and voice their concerns. So we found that we got more feedback during the individual meetings than the group meetings. And we actually started with the rooming in. That seems to be one of the things that we could kind of just kind of promote up front was rooming in. And like I said, with our community, the word got out really, really fast. Bring a family member, bring a support person, because the baby's going to be, in the room with you. 23 out of the 24 hours. So after the word of mouth started to get out, we've had great success with our rooming in.
Fantastic. Okay. Any other questions for our hospitals? We have a few more minutes if anyone has any burning question.
This is Kim. I have a quick question about some of the hospitals who have dedicated in the past, in the way we were structured before, who had dedicated nursery nurses who were also turned into your NICU nurse as well in the smaller hospital. Is how you handle that, the nurses who may or may not have triage skills and labor skills, but have just always done nursery. What did you do with those nurses when we no longer have a well baby nursery? Did those nurses just start doing mother-baby couplet care, or do they still just tend to all the babies and chart on all the babies on the unit, or how do you utilize those strictly nursery people?
Hey, Kim, this is Carmen. We actually still have our nursery staff, and they do just baby, the baby care. They actually do it in the room. They round with our physicians, provide any of the care that a normal nursery, would provide. And one of the things that we do to help them as far as utilization is they actually kind of help out with some of the labor and delivery part of it, not exactly like skills, but, is there anything I can do for you? Can I, help your patient to ambulate? Anything that they can do to be helpful, to the labor and delivery nurses. So we actually still have a nursery, a well baby nursery.
That's kind of where we are right now, is trying to figure out, like you say, ways that they can be helpful, ways that they can be utilized, because they're an RN staff as well. So there's definitely things that they can do. But I think our hospital is sort of pushing for couplet care, just total couplet care, instead of separating one person to care for all the babies, and and then one person can do several mothers or whatever the A1 standards are. But instead of doing that, they want us to do pretty much encouraging just couplet care. And so that's going to be difficult for, and not saying difficult, when that same nursery nurse needs to switch over in case one of these babies turns sick and has to go to the NICU, then she's got to be able to turn loose of what she's caring for. If she has a couple of couplets that she's taking care of, she's got to be able to turn those over to someone else and now be the NICU nurse. So I'm not sure how that's going to work with us. I'm trying to encourage keeping the nursery taking care of all babies and that kind of thing, but it's kind of difficult right now.
Yeah, and initially we thought that we were going to have a decrease in staff, as in regards to the nursery, but actually it all worked out fine. Like I said, as long as you give them additional tasks to assume, we've had no issues with productivity or anything like that. So I think when you get a little bit further into it, you'll find out that there are other ways, that they can be useful during the process or during the course of a shift.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's great feedback. That's a great topic, and we have started recently a CHAMPS listserv where if you want to get feedback from hospitals on how they're doing things, you can contact us and we can add you to the listserv, or we can put the question out for you and you can get feedback from all of the CHAMPS hospitals that are participating. It might be a helpful tool for you, so let us know. And I'm noticing that we have reached the 1 o'clock mark, so I'll just put this last slide up here as we close. But as Moon said, we have our next 2 webinars coming up. We're very grateful for all of you for joining, especially the hospitals who shared their experiences. And if you'd like to see a recording of this webinar, it will be uploaded to our website by tomorrow. So again, we're very grateful for Carmen, Lisa, and Kim, and If you have any questions, just let us know. Thanks for joining us today.